Tonight's class was about dreams, understanding good dreams, prophetic dreams, dreams with people we love that come to us after they pass away, dreams with the most holy and righteous, and various symbols of dreams. It was wonderful. A lot of people participated. A lot of people are getting a lot of signs in their dreams, and hope you also will gain from the class. Please share and subscribe. I hope everyone's summer is proceeding. You know, each person different. I don't know, for some people it doesn't even change anything, and for some people it's a very dramatic difference. So wherever you're holding in that spectrum, I hope summer is going well. And we were discussing last week dreams. And last week we were sort of more focusing, of course, we got a little bit off, which is totally fine in a topic like this. There's always gonna be questions, which is great. On dreams, that maybe what's the function of dreams? Why do we dream? Do we need to dream? Do you need to remember your dreams? And dreams of a more negative caliber. So today we get to talk about positive dreams. So within positive dreams, there are many different types. Now, unlike by negative, well, let me go back a second and say the sentence differently. Last week we discussed the function of dreams and how dreams cleanse the mind and cleanse the soul, and how dreams are necessary, and how dreams are like this shake and bake bag that take all the stuff clinging to your brain and your soul from the whole day's junk and release them, detach them. And dreams are really incredibly necessary and cleanse out the toxins in your mind and in your soul. We also said you don't need to remember your dreams. The function is to release, so it's totally fine if you don't remember your dreams. But people always have this fear that maybe there was an important dream that they missed. So that's not going to happen. Now I'm going to speak about positive dreams, which of course are the important dreams you don't want to miss, and you have no fear. If you have such a dream, you will remember it because its function is to communicate to you something. So therefore, even if you normally forget your dreams, this one you will remember because it really is a communication. Now, there are a number of different types of positive dreams. So we can speak about this very high level positive dream, where it says that secrets of Torah are revealed to you by night if you work strenuously at Torah by day. And it says that someone who's really investing their mind in Torah and really thinking and wrestling, grappling with something that's just bothering them and they cannot solve it, and they're really investing their mind in it, at night, they'll be given the answer. Now that sounds like, whoa, that must have happened a few hundred years ago, but I actually do have an experience when I taught this once to a high school class. One of my students said that exactly happened to her brother, who she doesn't think is a saint, just a regular kid who was really grappling with something in Torah, really struggling and really invested and really trying to figure it out. And when he woke up the next morning, he said he knew the answer, and he literally said it came to him in his sleep. So that is sort of a plug for the rest of us in this example and in others, that we shouldn't feel this is only for people far holier than anyone we know. Miriam, do you have a question?
It wasn't a question. I just wanted to share. I'm going to try and make this really quick, a really quick positive story about a dream I had. 20 some years ago, it was Pesach, and in real life, we were at my husband's family in Denver, and his grandmother went to a room and she had passed away second Seder night. Okay. Oh, wow. They are all Kohanim. They could not be shomer for the body in the hospital. Myself and my sister-in-law were the shomrim that first day. We were both expecting, and we both miscarried after being shomrim. It was very strange. Anyway, I had a dream that
it actually makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of evil that can come to a dead body, so it actually makes a lot of sense.
It It's bizarre.
Like someone who's pregnant is not allowed to make a tahara.
Yeah, I know, right. But we were the only ones at that
Right.
point.
I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying there's a reason for those laws. Just like someone pregnant is not allowed to go to a cemetery for a funeral.
Right.
Because of the evil that's there that could.
Exactly.
There's a lot of susceptibility in those situations. So, I mean, you didn't do anything wrong, but it makes a lot of sense.
We were
Okay,
both
keep going. Let's hear the story.
far along, and they had to deliver the baby. It was a boy. Okay. So a few weeks later, after they buried his grandmother, I had a dream that a little boy came to me and he was dancing around my husband's parents' house, and his grandmother, who I was a shomer for the body. She looked amazing. Before she had passed oxygen, she was just very sick. And she looked great. And she told the little boy, okay, now it's time to come with me. Come with me now. And it was just a very powerful dream. And I'll just never forget it. I'm grateful that Hashem gave me that dream to tell me that little boy, you know, I'm assuming that was the baby, is okay.
Wow. That is a very powerful dream. You have a lot of such spooky stories, Miriam. You do. Some people are naturally open and receptive, and then they get them. That is a very, very, very powerful dream. And it logically, honestly, makes perfect sense. Like in my mind, it makes so much sense that there's obviously going to be a connection between the deceased grandmother, great grandmother in the situation, and that child. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad it brought you comfort. And that would definitely be, so when we're discussing the idea of a dream, that would almost be more like a, if you will, prophetic dream, meaning it's really giving you, it's not a secret of Torah, but it's really the next category, which is viewed as like a miniature prophecy. The person is having a prophecy in a dream when they sleep, and it doesn't feel like a regular dream. It feels more substantial. It's much more impactful. Obviously, you're going to remember it. You're not going to have it and forget it. And it's conveying to you something. So you could say, well, was Miriam's a prophecy? But I would view it as something along those lines. It was a message. It was a message to her, not about the future, about the past, but it was giving her an insight into something she wouldn't otherwise have necessarily linked the dots and connected. I remember my clearest example that I can think of that happened with me, that I remember very clearly, was someone had come to me to discuss what Jewish name she should take on. She never had a Jewish name, and I remember it just was after birth, and I guess from that perspective, you could say sort of receptive, open, exhausted, but then all those spiritual auras, and I had, whatever, I didn't have any advice for her per se. And that night when I went to sleep, it came to me in my sleep exactly her name. And when I woke up, I knew her name, and it wasn't like a vague, it wasn't like it was absolute, like solid iron firmness. I knew exactly what her name was supposed to be. So it's that I would call like a miniature prophecy, small. It's not, the full-blown prophecy where the prophet, has like an epileptic seizure, seemingly, but God is revealing information to you. Dina?
Yeah, so this actually like reminds me, my older sister who passed away when I was like a toddler. I remember very specifically, I'm not sure exactly what it is. I think they're buried with something like a kseva or something. I'm not sure. Like, is there something where like a rabbi has to like write it and then they're buried with it or something?
No.
Or no? Okay, something
I'm
where
aware of. You're saying if a child passes away?
If a child passes away, apparently, you don't bury them with it. But I remember that my mother got a call like 2 weeks, like a week after Shiva was over, and from her teacher at like Kinderland, which was in Kins. And she said, like, listen, I'm like an assistant teacher. You don't really know me so well, but I've had this dream for 3 nights in a row. And my rabbi said to tell you, he said, listen, your daughter came, I have been having the same dream of your daughter coming to me and saying, Mora, you forgot my name tag. Mora, you forgot my name tag. And then that's it. The dream is over. And my rabbi said, I should tell you. And I'm really sorry. This is really random. And so my mother went to her Rav, and it actually went all the way up. And apparently the Rav who wrote it passed away. And the halacha is that they have to be buried with it if the Rav passes away before the child or something like that. And they had to like bury her with it.
Wow.
And so that was also like one of those, it sounds like one of those prophetic kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. That would be, or the idea, or like we're going to discuss, sometimes when someone passes away and they want to give a message, so the deceased themselves, like in this situation, come and give a message. And you could say, well, why would she give a message to this teacher? Why wouldn't she give it to like her mother or someone closer? But sometimes specifically, the message is given through someone a little further because that more validates the truth of the message. Meaning it's far more unlikely that this teacher should be having 3 dreams in a row about your sister. And therefore the fact that she had it sort of more makes it authenticates the message. And that could be why sometimes, as I actually shared a situation last week, again, where someone had this dream that, I'm not going to details, I shared it last week, but again, it was like, well, why did that person get the dream? And seemingly the answer is because they are far, and therefore, because they're far, when we hear it, we know it's true, because why would they be thinking that? And why would they be thinking that 3 nights in a row? So that is very, very powerful. So did they put the cloth then in the grave?
Yes. So it went all the way up to Rabbi Yeshiv because I think there was a lot of confusion about it. And then they did have to put it in with her. Yeah.
Wow. So again, I would view that a little bit differently. I wouldn't view that in the category of almost like a prophecy as much as I would view that as a very strong, powerful example of the deceased coming back to give us information that they need us to know. So here your sister was conveying information that was necessary for her soul's release, for her soul's ascent. And this was the medium she was using that this information was conveyed. Now, another idea within dreams is the tzaddik coming to you in a dream. That we consider like the most amazing gift if you have a dream with a tzaddik. Now, within that, of course, you could differentiate it into 2 categories: a dream with a tzaddik and the tzaddik coming to you in a dream. That might sound the same, but I mean 2 different things. A dream with a tzaddik is a dream, and in the dream you see a tzaddik. It totally feels like a dream. It's a dream, but of course, when the Gemara speaks about the signs of a dream, there's nothing more powerful than a dream in which you dream of a tzaddik. So dreaming of a tzaddik is a very, very high level and an omen for much good and spirituality. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about when you dream of a tzaddik. I'm talking about the tzaddik using the medium of the dream to come to you. And when that happens, it feels completely different. I can definitely say for myself that I've had various dreams. I've had times I've dreamed with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and some of them are definitely dreams. Some of them are more powerful than dreams, and some of them are so tangible, they're real. And it's very easy for me as I'm experiencing it to say, when I wake up and think about it, was an amazing dream, or that wasn't a dream. That was different than a dream. I remember my strongest one. This son is just turned 17, but I remember the night before his bris. That's a very holy night, the night before the bris. It's almost considered like a dangerous, vulnerable night. That's why the tradition is that the father stays up all night learning Torah to protect the baby. Doesn't say anything about protecting the mother of the baby. And I remember that night, literally remember the Rebbe coming to me in the dream. I'm 17 years ago. I remember it very, very, very vividly. It doesn't feel like a dream. It's not a dream. My husband had actually interesting incidents also with the Rebbe coming to him in a dream. And it was many, many, many years ago, probably about 30. And just had 2 little children then. And the Rebbe said to my husband about my son that he should learn all of what's called Likutei Sichos. It's collected writings of Lubavitcher Rebbe, some 30 plus volumes, probably actually about 40 volumes. You know, each one a volume, each one a lot in there. Okay, it was a dream, and you know, didn't feel like a dream, but you know, I don't know if my son was a year old at the time, a year and a half, something like that. Okay. Fast forward 20 plus years, and this son happened to mention to his brother that he had just completed learning all of this, you know, this set of over 40 some volumes of the Rebbe's writings. He said this to his younger brother. And the younger brother said, wow, that's what the Rebbe said you were supposed to do in the dream. Well, my son never knew that. My husband never happened to share it with him, or for some reason shared it with his younger brother. And it was just so eerie to us how like some 20 years before this message was conveyed, we never conveyed the message forward, but somehow it transpired. So there's definitely that energy of the tzaddik coming to you and using the dream as the medium of communication. But even if it's not as intense as that, and it's not a medium of communication, if any of you have ever dreamt anything, a pure dream, but you definitely saw a tzaddik in the dream, it's considered a very, very powerful, amazing sign of good and of godliness and of spirituality. It's a very good omen, as we say, for much good happening. Anyone has such an experience like that they remember?
Hi.
Yehudi.
I had this weird dream years and years and years ago. I was in high school, and I know that someone brought it up that this dream was in the Gemara, and I don't remember the exact details of, like, I remember this thing happening to me, and in the Gemara they say either it's a really good thing or a really bad thing, and I'm always scared to bring it up because if it is a really bad thing, like, that's so scary. And if it is a really good thing, great. But like, I just don't want to like believe it.
So as we said last week, the dream goes according to the interpretation. So whenever you have a dream like that, you always want any dream that feels powerful, or definitely a dream that potentially is negative. If you would ever have a dream that's potentially negative, you want to go to someone wise and understanding and on your side, sympathetic, who will interpret the dream for good. And as I explained at length last week, the dream goes according to the interpretation. This person doesn't have to be holy. They could be Jewish or non-Jewish. It's not that they have any innate powers. This is part of God's system of how dreams function, is that dreams go according to the interpretation.
Right. So I first, when I heard like that the Gemara has this, like, they talk about this dream and that it's a good thing, I was like, oh, great. But then I heard like randomly it was brought up somewhere else that this could be a very bad dream. So like, I'm so confused on how to like take it.
You want to take it as good, because we always want to take it as good, because we never want anything. We don't need any negative energy in our life. So you're always your go-to in a dream is to take it as good. Now, again, as we said last week, if a dream really frightens you, you can fast. You can only fast the morning you wake up. We said it's a very unusual situation, because generally for a fast not to be a diet, you know, everyone that's a dieting fasting craze, for a fast to be a real Torah fast, it has to be taken on the day before, like mincha time, except for a fast of a dream. The fast of a dream can only be that morning when you wake up. And you could decide that morning you're fasting because you're concerned. Some people light an extra candle when they light Shabbos candles for the rest of their life, if they have a dream that they really want to turn over and make sure it's good. But again, the general, not as difficult as either of those two things, mode of conduct is to go to someone. And if you still are thinking about it today, you could go to someone, share with them the dream, someone you trust that they're going to only give you the best possible interpretation, and have them give you an interpretation. And God should put the right interpretation in their lips. And that will be, the dream is according to the interpretation.
Right. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone else had this type of dream we were talking about, where like you have a vision of a tzaddik, or a tzaddik comes to you in the dream, or anything along those lines? You know, it's a very special thing, and I'm not going to say it's a common thing, because nothing like this is common, but it definitely happens. And it definitely is a medium of communication. It's a medium, you know, of how we receive a certain spiritual message. And always, where, as I said to Miriam, I meant it very sincerely. Some people are much more open to these spiritual messages. They're much more, I don't know if you want to use the word susceptible, or their aura, or their energy, or however you want to express it. And it seems like it just happens much more often to them. But definitely it happens. And definitely, again, in that which is purely positive, if you get a message, or if it's just a sight of a very, very holy person, it definitely uplifts you and gives you a feeling that good things are happening, good things are going to happen, which is always you know, a great message, always something that we want to hear, always something that's very, very, very meaningful to us. And, you know, obviously there are countless stories with the Rebbe coming to people in dreams, for sure. Countless stories. A former student of mine, who also has a son with Down syndrome, and her son, actually, when my son was born, they told me my son would need cardiac surgery when he was 3. Thank God that was never necessary. That never happened. But her son also, she was told, would need cardiac surgery. And like that, it was happening. She was probably also was like 3. That's usually when they do it. And then it was happening. Actually, our sons were born very close, at the same age. And it was the night before the surgery. And she had a dream. And in her dream, the Lubavitcher Rebbe came to her and gave her a message. He said, "Don't operate." And she woke up from the dream. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do. I think if it was me, I'd be like, okay, that's it. We're not operating. But she didn't know what to do. She definitely remembered the dream. She definitely knew she had this dream, but she just, I mean, what's she supposed to do? Cancel the operation? So she did nothing. She did nothing, because what's she supposed to tell the doctor? You know, she didn't know what to do, so she did nothing. So they brought their son to the hospital early morning. She has this dream, like in her conscience, and she knows the Rebbe came to her dream, and she knows the Rebbe told her don't operate, but like, what's she supposed to do? And as they were preparing her son for the operation, and of course her son was already in the room, she wasn't with him anymore. She and her husband were waiting outside, and the doctor came out and he said, "I never did this, but I relooked and I decided we shouldn't operate." So she was like, yeah, I knew that was supposed to happen. I don't think she told him that, but you know. Aliza, what's your question?
And maybe it's just from having been there recently or anticipating going, but what if we don't have a vision of a tzaddik in our dream, but we have a vision of the kever where they're buried, but we know that we're going. Like, for example, I knew that Sunday, my husband and I were planning on going to a Bay Asylum Sunday afternoon. In between, he was seeing patients in the morning before, seeing patients afterwards, but we were going midday. The weather was perfect. And so early, like somewhere, I don't know, maybe it was 4 in the morning, whatever it was, the dream was clear in my head because I awakened to go to the bathroom. And I was dreaming of where we were going. So that I had a vision of, and I felt good about it. But it's not like I saw who we were going to. I saw the image of where we were going. Is that
I would assume that's a dream of something very holy. We called it Sion, or the Oihel of a tzaddik.
right? Right.
Where tzaddik is buried is a place of tremendous holiness. Unlike, a regular grave, a tzaddik's grave is tremendously holy. So yes, I would definitely take it. Obviously, you're right. You might have wanted to see the tzaddik also, but I definitely would take it as a very strong sign. And yeah, I know people that have personal stories that have things like that involved that were actually very, very, very powerful. So I would definitely take it very powerfully.
Okay.
Absolutely. And again, it's interesting what Elisa's saying, that maybe if some tzaddik she never saw appear to her in her dream, she might or might not have been able to understand what was going on. But seeing the burial site of the tzaddik, of this very holy individual, was definitely a message to her from the tzaddik. And definitely I would take it as a message of the strength of her prayers and that they will be answered. And it's very funny. I mean, I once saw this on YouTube video, an Israeli woman coming by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, was by the Dollars line, and saying to the Rebbe, "You came to me in a dream and you told me egozim, egozim, egozim. What did you mean?" And the Rebbe told her. So it's very interesting. It was just very interesting. Obviously, we don't usually have opportunity to do something like that, but it's just very interesting, this idea of like, yes, there's a message, and sometimes it's cryptic, but there's a message. Probably the most.
What did egozim mean? Sorry.
I do not remember. I didn't finish the story because I'm not going to make up something with a true story, but you can look it up on YouTube. It was one of these dollar YouTube videos, and you see it, you see the video, you see the Israeli woman, you see the Rebbe, and you see her saying that. And it's very interesting because the Rebbe didn't deny it. He literally told her what it meant, what the symbolism was. I think the most common dream that people have, significant positive dream that people have, is dreaming of someone who they loved who passed away. And that is, I say common, I don't want to necessarily just use the word common, because first of all, common might trivialize it. I don't mean it trivial at all. It's not trivial. It's very, very special. And I also wouldn't want anyone to feel, well, it didn't happen to me. My so-and-so passed away and it didn't happen to me. And again, that could have to do with a lot of different factors of both you and the person who passed away. But I shouldn't say countless, but I can't even remember how many people and how many stories I have heard from people who had someone who they love pass away and come to them in a dream to give them some type of message, or generally it's usually a reassurance. Most of the time it's a reassurance. It's a comfort. In a sense, like what happened to Miriam, though I think that's a little more detailed, specific, but even just a general reassurance, the feeling tone you get from the dream is, I'm okay. I'm still with you. I've experienced it many times with various people I'm close to that passed away. And when you wake up in the morning, you feel good. You remember the dream. Very often in the dream, I've said to the person, but wait, you passed away. Like it's that realistic. Like, I know you passed away. How am I seeing you? The answer is never, because this is a dream. But very often in the dream, like nobody but me can see this person, but it's every time when I wake up, it's very, 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 very comforting. Very, 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 very comforting. And sometimes, as Dina conveyed with her sister who passed away, it's to give a message. Often giving a message happens in close proximity to the passing, meaning like how with Dina's sister, that the deceased needs you do something for them. So I'm saying this is generally in close proximity to the passing. Very often it's like to take care of a debt that they didn't take care of, something we're told that causes tremendous anguish and problems in the next world, things along those lines, that they're giving you a message, or as happened with Dina's sister, conveyed through someone else this message to do something for them that they can't do for themselves. I'm not sure what you mean by your question.
I've had like so many, countless throughout my life of like different times of being pregnant, giving birth, or just holding my baby knowing it was mine, and like where it felt so realistic. So what, I guess, could that mean?
I would definitely assume it's something to do with you and a baby that's waiting to be born.
Well, I'm talking about even before I had kids and after I had
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. 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 If there's some dream you consistently have with pregnancy and with a baby and with holding a baby and this and that, I would assume there's a neshama that's waiting to be born through you. Unless you're saying it happened before you had your children, then it could have been one of your daughters. But if it was a boy, or if it was after, I would definitely feel it's an impetus. I need to have this baby. This baby needs to be born. And that definitely would be, I would view it as a message from that neshama to you, wanting you to have that message. It's yeah. It's that's exactly how I would interpret that. Yeah, Elle?
What about when you have dreams that people are pregnant and you tell them before they announce it to people, and you tell them, oh, I had a dream that you were pregnant, like I dreamt Miriam was pregnant, and she was, but she wasn't public yet, and then they're pregnant. So what does that mean?
So your question is why you had the dream, or your question
Yeah.
is, were you right in sharing it with Miriam?
No. I mean, it's happened to me like 3 times that I dreamt someone was pregnant and I told them. Either I told them like right away, or else like once they announced they were pregnant, I'm like, oh, I dreamt you were pregnant. So why would I dream it?
Very, very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, Elle, you're holier than we know. We're finding out secrets here.
This was years ago. This is not now.
Oh,
Get out
No,
there.
not now.
she used to be holy. Okay, she used to be holy.
No, for me, I'm not pregnant now. This was a long time ago.
Okay.
Wait, can I jump in for a second? Because I also have had this.
Yeah.
But I purposely didn't tell them. I waited for the friend or the cousin to tell me, even though in my dream, I recently had not so recently, a few months ago, where I had a dream that someone who she and I've known each other growing up, we're now actually cousins through marriage. I dreamt that she was trying to convince my husband and me to be in a certain place in order to be kfater for the bris. Yet she hadn't yet told anyone that she was expecting. So I had this dream, at this point, and I said to my husband, I said, by the way, we have to do whatever we're doing, regardless of when so-and-so and so-and-so insists that we have to be there by the bris. And he looked at me and said, but wait, what bris? And I said, oh, I forgot. It was a dream. Don't even mention that I even said anything. Okay. 5 months later, when she said, by the way, I just want to let you know, like I'm putting on maternity, I'm expecting, and I said, I know, but we can't make it. I know where you want to be for the bris. And she said, actually, I was already thinking that, but how do you know it's a boy? And I said, because I already dreamt that we had the conversation that you wanted us to come and be kfater. And so fast forward, yes, they had a boy. Yes, she begged. She tried to get us to be where they were geographically, and it did not work. Anyway, I learned when I had these dreams regarding different friends, different cousins, I just wait for them to tell me, but I don't tell anyone else, because if they're not telling, why should I?
Right. So I was going to say that. That's what I was going to say to you, Elle, that normally I would assume in such a dream not to share it, just because you don't know. I somehow also would feel, but then the question she's asking is, okay, so she's not supposed to tell anyone else, obviously, she knew that. And maybe she's even not supposed to tell the person, but why is she getting this information? What's the significance of the
Right.
communication?
Yes.
How I would interpret it for you and for Eliza and for Heidi's sister-in-law is two things that I think are combined. One is it's a very, very palpable energy of an neshama entering this world. It's, I mean, you know, when we're going through it, we might not be feeling so spiritual. So I'm not going to claim you are or aren't, you know, everyone's different, but it's an enormous spiritual journey. It's, you know, the most spiritual journey a soul is entering this world. So there's a lot of spiritual energy coming through conception, pregnancy, childbirth. That's why when someone is pregnant, they're supposed to be supremely cautious what they eat and what they see and what they hear because of, you know, the vulnerability of this journey. So it's very, very intense spiritual energy. And it could be that you have some shaychus, you have some connection to that journey, to the child or to the mother, or something there means you're supposed to know, you're supposed to be aware, you're supposed to be, you know, helping that child and that mother. And that's why God's giving you this information. And definitely there's, as we said before with Miriam, there is susceptibility. Honestly, I've never once dreamt about someone being pregnant. Never. And I've had many dreams with people that passed away. Thank God, a number of dreams with Lubavitcher Rebbe, a prophetic dream. I've had lots of different types, but I never had a dream with someone being pregnant. So again, I would say all three is a lot of spiritual energy. And there's a reason you're being given this dream. There's a reason. There's a reason you, even if you have no clue, I would say at the least, let's say if it was me, I would think maybe I should be saying an extra chapter of Tehillim or giving tzedakah, doing something to help this process. There's a reason I was given this information. Or, you know, when the mother's pregnant and nobody else can know, but I know, so maybe I can be an extra support. You can't tell anyone else and fetch to anyone else yet, but I already know, so I could be there for her. It's not random. It's not like God is just sprinkling, you know, prophetic spirits, so he's just dumping some on you. So there's a reason you're supposed to know. And again, to me, those would be the reasons. You have a connection to the child, to the mother. You can be helping the mother already before anyone else can know to help the mother. You can be spiritually doing something to help the child. You can already feel you're invested in this, and you have for whatever reason, you have a relationship, and therefore when the child's born, you can be extra invested. There's a reason. There's a reason. It's prophecy. It's miniature prophecy. And there's a reason you're given that prophecy. And then again, I would also say there is some people's energy is just more open to certain things. And that's why you're saying you had this 3 times, and Heidi's saying her sister-in-law, and Eliza's saying, if you're open to it, maybe you get more. Heidi, what were you going to add?
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute me. Well, I was going to share a dream story, but also regarding like the pregnancy dreams. Like I've had lots of those dreams, but I'm like never right. Like it never ever. And if I dream like a gender, I'm always wrong about that too. So it's like if I dream a gender, then it's probably the opposite gender.
Yeah, opposite gender. Okay.
So
Then we're discounting your prophetic spirits, Heidi. Okay. You're off. But
so
Ellen and Eliza and your sister-in-law, that they're always right, we're going to give them more credit.
But so the dream story that I was going to share, it's about, I think I shared it once when we were meeting at Shira's, but I figure there's people on here, but it was an interesting dream. I was pregnant with my son, who's 17 years old now. So this was like 18 years ago, let's say. And I knew he was a boy, and my grandfather had recently passed away. And I was definitely going to name after him because I was pretty close with my grandfather. I don't, there's not really any from people in my family. So it was really important for me that like a Jewish baby get named after him. And at one point I was, I don't know, probably like 7 months pregnant, 6 months pregnant, something like that. And I had this like very, very vivid dream of my grandfather. He was yelling at me that he's not dead and I shouldn't name the baby after him. He said, "You can't name the baby after me because I'm not dead." And I woke up like it was Shabbos and Shabbos morning. And I woke up and I was like shaking. Like I was just like, it was such a real dream that he had like talked to me. He was in this like, I don't know, it kind of looks like a big open, like kind of cave type situation. I don't know. It was very, very unsettling. And he was kind of like in hysterics that he's not dead. So I can't name the baby after him. And at the time, I didn't know what to do because I really wanted to name the baby after him. And at the time, we were really close with Rabbi Goldzweig. So I went to talk to him about it. And I was like, basically, like, I can, I just am curious, like, should I name the baby after my grandfather or not? Like, I don't know, like, should I listen to him? Should I not? Whatever. So Rabbi Goldzweig said that what he believes happened is that like nobody said Kaddish for my grandfather. So he had felt that like the soul, like his like neshama was just like very unsettled and like wasn't really like realizing that he was dead. Like he was confused himself. And that's why he was telling me not to name the baby after him, not because I shouldn't, but because he like didn't understand that he was dead or something. So he said that we should have somebody say Kaddish for him. And then that was that. I think my husband's uncle maybe did or something like that. And he also said maybe to add something to the name because my grandfather wasn't like from at all. So my grandfather's name, his Hebrew name was Avraham, and then so we named my son Avraham Hillel in the end. So we added Hillel like just after Hillel.
Very nice.
But
That is a good point. I mean, both of the two things you're raising, that's an incredible dream. And that's interesting how Rabbi Goldzweig interpreted it, but again, good dream is according to the interpretation. So that was obviously the correct answer. The two things you're raising is very important. One is totally parenthetical to our discussion, but very important. One is how absolutely critical it is for the soul for Kaddish to be said, and very important. Anyone doesn't relate to at all. Anyone that they passed away and nobody's saying Kaddish for them, you should make sure someone says Kaddish. You can contact me and I can contact someone to say Kaddish. Very, very critical for the soul that Kaddish is said, as Rabbi Goldzweig is saying here. If Kaddish is not said, it's, the soul's not able to really ascend properly. And the other thing Heidi said, which again is very parenthetical to our discussion, but besides this very powerful dream, I think is very, very significant, is the idea of naming after a person who's not religious. So that sometimes becomes like a bit of a sticky situation, not sure what you're supposed to do situation, because there's an obligation to name after your parents if they passed away. There's no obligation to name after grandparents, but many people want to. We know when you name after someone, they're like continuing through that child. So you definitely want to. But then what do you do if this child is continuing the energy of the person and you didn't feel they were a good person, or they weren't religious at all? They weren't a bad person, but they weren't religious at all. Like, what do you do? And it's really a question. If you really felt the person wasn't a good person, but like, let's say it was a parent, so you sort of feel I'm obligated to name after them, but I really don't want my child continuing that energy. I wouldn't want my child to have that energy. It's something to discuss with the rabbi, that maybe the rabbi would tell you to modify the name in a certain way, add to the name in a certain way, or not name after the person. And then if it's a person you do want to name after, they weren't a bad person, you do want to name after them, you want to give them this enormous gift. There's no bigger gift you can give someone than naming after them. This is literally giving them continuation of their existence. It's the most humongous gift you can ever give. But if they weren't religious, then again, if there's any negative energy attached, you don't want to give that to your child. And then very often, people would say, as Rabbi Goldzweig told Heidi, add a name, a powerful name, a good name, a holy name, in some way. So you're balancing out and drawing in. There's the energy of the deceased, but there's also the energy of someone else, which is totally fine, that can hopefully, bring in all the godliness that the child will need. So it's a very, obviously we all know when we give a name. It's not a light decision. It's a very big decision, and it definitely is carrying on godliness, and has a lot of ramifications. People sometimes say, oh, if I had understood the name that meant, I would never have given my child that name. I would never have done that to myself, or such similar things. But obviously it's all exactly what it's supposed to be, divine prophetic spirit, if we know it or not. Okay, so getting back to what we were talking about here. So we have, as we said, generally, if someone passes away, it's comfort, it's reassurance, I'm with you. Maybe they're more powerful in certain times. I had a dream with one of my grandparents who I never dreamt about. So I remember I woke up in the morning, I was like confused because I never dreamed about that grandparent. And I checked, and I believe it was their birthday. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I dreamt about. But not that I knew that it was their birthday, but obviously their energy was stronger, and that's why I had that dream. Or as we said, sometimes it is conveying messages like we discussed last week and like we heard today. And again, generally it's a message very often, very shortly after they pass away. And of course, sometimes, like Dina said, that the message was conveyed 3 times. There are many, many situations like that I've heard with a dream happening again and again and again, because the first time you dream it, the person doesn't take it so seriously, let's say, or the person doesn't want to listen to the dream, and therefore they're told it again and again and again. Now, obviously, we never, ever, ever are allowed to try to bring a deceased person to us in a dream. Sometimes after someone passes away, they know it happens. They've heard all their friends have stories, and it doesn't happen to them. And we're never, ever, ever allowed to try to do that in any way. That would be considered coming from a place of evil, meaning if they come to you, it's beautiful and warm and reassuring. If you try to bring them to you, it's absolutely, absolutely forbidden. And again, as we said, this can also be Hashem using the deceased person to come to you as a communication. Now, in the Gemara, is a long list of various signs if you see various things in a dream and what that means. Now, just to understand, before we get into it at all, none of this applies if you were thinking about it during the day. If by day you were in a zoo and saw a certain animal, and then that night you had a dream with the animal, and in the Gemara, it says, if you dream about this animal, it means blah, 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 like elephants, for example. Well, that's irrelevant. Certain color horses, it's irrelevant. You saw it by day. That's why you dreamt about it at night. So we're talking about a situation where you're not thinking about it at all, and it comes to you, oh, this is a message. I remember Miriam sharing a dream with don't say Lashon Hara, don't gossip. And that, because she wasn't thinking about it, it has more weight than a dream. Now, a lot of signs that the Gemara says are very, very, very positive. There are some negative signs, but the high majority are positive, which could again go back to what we said before about the dream being according to the interpretation, and therefore definitely not wanting, even if something is, so to speak, a negative sign, not really wanting to state it as an absolute fact, going back to Yehudi's question, like even if the sages know, yeah, there's some negativity attached to this issue, why should they have to say it? Why do you have to know it? Give it a positive interpretation, and that will be the meaning of the dream. But be it as, however you're going to interpret it, the vast majority of signs that are written in the Talmud are all very, 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 very positive. It says, for example, that if you would see in a dream the Hebrew letter Nun, and especially if you see 2 nuns, that means you're going to experience miracles. It says if you see, as we discussed, a tzaddik, it's a sign of godliness. We spoke about working hard. It says in the Gemara, as we said, if you work hard by Torah by day, secrets of Torah will be revealed to you at night. A well, it says if you see a well, that's a sign that you're going to have peace. Or it's a sign you're going to find Torah. Or, well, it has a lot of symbols. It's a sign of life. It says if you see a reed, you should anticipate wisdom. Pumpkins are a sign of God-fearingness, that you're so God-fearing. You're God-fearing with all your strength. It's a very big compliment from heaven to see a pumpkin in your dream. Not like, time of year when you just see them all around. Totally weren't thinking about it. They're in your dream. It's a very big compliment from heaven. A donkey, interestingly enough, is a sign of salvation. A white horse is a good sign. A peaceful trotting red horse is a good sign. It says if the red horse is galloping or pursuing, that's not such a good sign. Now let's just say, to understand this concept, that a person had in their dream a red galloping horse and they happen to know this Gemara. What should they do? They should go to someone to interpret it for good. Well, the Gemara already said it's a bad sign. So what? Dreams go according to the interpretation. It actually is just cueing you in to make sure you should get it interpreted for good, because why be stuck? It says very interesting. How you would know, I don't know, but I guess since it's dream, you would know. It says if you see Yishmael in your dream, Yishmael, Abraham's son, it's a sign your prayers will be answered. As his prayers were answered, your prayers will be answered. But again, it says not if you happen to see an Arab in your dream, and not if you see a person whose name is Yishmael in your dream. Only the original Yishmael, the son of Abraham. So how in the world you would know he's the original Yishmael, the son of Abraham, is because in your dream you know, because we can be very omnipotent in our dream. It says if you see a camel in your dream, death was decreed on you from heaven and you're saved from it. It says if you see Pinchas, again, how would you know? Because it's your dream and you know. If you see Pinchas in your dream, you're going to experience wonders. It says an elephant in your dream, you'll experience wonders. It says several elephants in your dream, you're going to experience wonders of wonders. But then in another place, it says, wait a minute, it says all animals in general are good, except elephants and monkeys. And we just said elephants are wonders of wonders. So the Talmud says, well, it depends if the elephant is saddled or not. If the elephant is saddled, meaning it's under control, it's a good sign. If it's not saddled, it's a bad sign. If you would see a eulogy in your dream, it's a sign that heaven has compassion on you and redeemed you. If you see putting on tefillin in your dream, it's a sign that you're going to have greatness. If you see davening, prayer in your dream, it's a good sign. Wheat is a sign that there'll be peace. Barley is a sign that your sins are forgiven. A grapevine with grapes on it is a sign you or your wife won't miscarry. A fig means you will retain your Torah. And there are many, many more, but we'll stop at this point because again, we just go on and on and on in just terms of all the varying ways. And again, how in the world would you ever know if you had a dream with a fig that it means you're going to retain your Torah? If you have a dream with barley that your sins were forgiven, or a dream with wheat that you're going to have peace, well, we wouldn't. And that's why the Talmud's telling us, because most of these things is not how we would interpret these signs, if we would interpret them at all. But since they're not random, so to speak, each one, if you don't think about it by day and you have it at night, is actually a message being conveyed to you from heaven. And that's why the Talmud is going through all these messages so we understand the message that heaven is giving us. Thank you so much for joining. I know it's a hard time, or maybe it's getting easier. Maybe the transition to summer was difficult, but maybe now that summer's here, maybe things have settled down. But thank you so much for joining. We should have a very, very blessed week with signs, without signs. We should feel God's presence and that we're connecting to him. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.